Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Showing Up to Life podcast and YouTube channel. Yes, my name is still Art Burns, and yes, we are still here without an intro. but and I would like to say I'm working on it, but as you know, it's in the queue to be worked on. Let's just leave it that. Leave it at that. I missed you yesterday, and I hope you didn't miss me too badly. Yesterday, actually, today, in this episode, in this segment, I'm going to tell you about what happened yesterday, and it is a great tale, even though it was very uncomfortable for me. It's a great tale of how, really the basics of how mindfulness and self-compassion help us with stressful situations. All right, so let's jump into it because it might be kind of a long story. So trying to keep to our 15-minute segment time here. And first of all, please accept my apology. I really do try to show up here for you every single day, 5 days a week at least. But sometimes, life just happens. So the setup is I had a couple of meetings scheduled and everything, kind of normal Friday. Had a great meeting in the morning with one of my clients who I've been working with for a very just amazing long time. And like, we're making great progress. It was really beautiful, just sharing some ideas and watching the growth and the personal, it's just so beautiful. And so while I'm on my call with my wonderful client yesterday, I can hear my son 2 floors above me in his bedroom, and he's screaming. And I can only imagine that he was screaming at the time as I'm talking to my client, I could only imagine that he's screaming I could tell that as a parent, you become very, very early on, you become very attuned to the different screams that children have, right? So I can tell, I don't want you to think like, oh, I'm just ignoring my child, he might be bleeding up there or something. You can tell, right? You can tell the scream that is, really troubling, that somebody's hurt, somebody needs help, versus a scream of virtually any other kind. And so the scream that was happening as I could hear it in my periphery. I'm in my meeting, but I can still hear it in my periphery. Is the scream or are the screams, I should say, because there's a lot of screaming, are the screams of a boy who's very frustrated with an electronic device. And yes, that's true. Okay. And so after my meeting, I went up and see him, or actually he came downstairs. We have a dartboard that I just, we actually just were given a dartboard, and Casey, my son, and I went out and bought the darts. And so he's just been like, he's loving it, And so he came down and trying to relieve some stress and trying to make himself feel better. And it was a beautiful way to watch him sort of regulate himself. And I was like, dude, I'm so impressed with you. And I'm really sorry that you're having such a hard time. And he started crying, and he's like, but I had all these, he's playing a game with one of his friends, and I had all these things that I had hatched or points that I had gotten or something, and then the computer crashed and I lost all of it. Now, here's the thing, and this is a little side note here. My parents at that point would have said, oh, get the hell over it, man. Are you kidding me? There's much more important. Go clean your room. This is what they would tell me, right? But and I guess I'm grateful for that to a certain extent, because, and to a very large extent, because it shows me that how wrong that was, and it allows me the opportunity to connect to this idea that, to my son, this game is the important thing. That's what it is to be a 10-year-old kid. And so when he's in between his schoolwork and his chores and stuff, like, that's his life. And who am I to, diminish the value of that, right? So anyway, I was honoring him, and I was, trying to soothe him. And I had a bunch of stuff that I was trying to get done. As you all know, I'm launching a new course today, so I had tons of work to do on that. Just like, getting ready. I got a lecture I got to give to a whole bunch of people today. You like to be prepared for this kind of thing. And so I had my plans all set up. Like, I had, my blocks. I have these meetings. I have this. I'm going to record my content. And then during this precious couple of hours, I'm going to work on my program, right? But that's how life happens. Life throws us curveballs all the time. Yesterday, the curveball was in the form of a child who was extraordinarily upset about something. And it so happened that my daughter was having a little bit of a struggle too. Hers was a little different. Hers had more to do with the fact that she bought the wrong thing. She went to Michael's with my wife before my wife went to work yesterday, and she went to Michael's and bought this yarn that she was going to hand knit into this thing for her friend, and that's what she does, and she's so beautiful and sweet that way. And when she got home, she realized, oh, I have this other thing that I need to do, and they had this other yarn. Why didn't I get it? And she, and again, my parents would have said, shut the heck up and clean your room. That was always their answer. Clean your room or go outside. Just get out of my face. Don't bother me with this crap, But again, to my daughter, this is a very, very important thing. And so here I am with two curveballs flying at my head. And you know what? I have a choice to make, right? I could follow the path of my parents and tell my children that they don't matter as much as this work that I have to do, which they don't understand that, right? I mean, 10 and 12-year-old kids do not get that concept of the obligation of work. They're learning it, and it's a beautiful thing to teach them, and it's important, and I will never cut off unless somebody is bleeding, I will never cut off a meeting with someone. This is an obligation, so they have to see that is. But it's also necessary for me to show them that we can be flexible, right? We don't have to be so rigid in our plans and in our sort of, mindset. We can be flexible. And this is a very positive thing for them to learn, right? I mean, rigidity and chaos, those are the signs of unwellness, of disintegration in the brain. So the more they can understand that flexibility is something that we try to figure out and try to achieve, well, then that means that we're trying to achieve integration. And that's a positive thing, right? So I made the decision to, okay, I'm going to go and unfortunately I had to actually, anyway, I'll get into the story, but I decided that I was going to, instead of prioritizing my plans and instead of clinging to my expectations, I was going to be flexible and I was going to accommodate my two children because I am their father. Yes, I am your coach, but I'm also their father. And these are both obligations that are not mutually exclusive of one another, right? They both are necessary. So I try my best, and that's what I have to do. But in this case, I had two children who were both in distress over things that I had the power to help, okay? And so I did. So the plan then was, and my son didn't even realize this, but my son has been, we put a deposit down on a little, it's called a crested gecko, as the kids call them, cresties. So my son, he has one lizard upstairs. It's a a leopard gecko with a carrot tail, which is apparently very, very rare, and he's extraordinarily proud of that, right? And he used to have a snake, and so like once every couple of weeks we go to this store where there's like these older, like 20-something-year-old guys working in this place, and my son is like they're like gods to him, when he goes in there and he talks about lizards, and they're all so nice to him. They actually, we were in there the other day, and one of the kids said, oh, Bo, who's one of the guys that's not there that day, he says, oh, every time you come in, Bo says that you're his favorite customer, so you should talk to him about trading for a lizard or buying a lizard from him sometime, and my son like puffed up when he heard that. It was the most adorable freaking thing I've ever seen in my life. So we've been planning to get my son this little crested gecko that he's just fallen in love with. And these things are so cute. I mean, they are adorable, and they love to jump. So if you put it on your hand and you put your other hand here, the lizard will jump over there. But they jump when you're not ready for it to. Like, it's really funny. So my wife and I had planned that yesterday was going to be the day that we went to pick the lizard up, right? We had all this stuff. We had put the deposit down yesterday. We got a thing came in money-wise. That was the plan. We're going to do it this day. But we hadn't told my son that. And like, here my son was in this completely distressed place. I knew that my wife wouldn't get home until about 7, and the store closes at 8. So it's like, what are the chances, So I was like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna blow my son's mind right here. And I know it's not about like making him happy by giving him something. That is not the vibe at all. Okay. The vibe was, all right, let's go for a ride, Casey. I'm gonna, let's just get out of here and try to reset our minds, And so we went to Michael's to get my daughter the yarn. And then the plan was after we drop off the yarn with my daughter, I'm gonna take you somewhere. It's gonna be a surprise. And he actually put his mask over his eyes to see, to like really get the surprise. And here's how like intensely observant my son is, how intensely mindful he is, that he discovered where we were going just based on the feeling of the car's turnings. He was like, I know that turn you just went, or you just got off the highway onto Wadsworth Road, whatever it is, and and we're going to Scales and Tails. I was like, dude, you are amazing. So we did this. Now, of course, I'm making it sound like it's this beautiful experience. Well, let me tell you. So we go to Michael's, and to pick out, so my daughter's like, well, just, take a picture of the different yarns and send it to me, and I'll circle the one that I want you to get. Like, okay, fine, because she doesn't want to come with us, right? So we get there, and there's no Wi-Fi, and so I join the Michael's Wi-Fi, and even that is like terribly slow, and it's taking minutes and minutes and minutes for this photo to go through. And then my daughter's not answering, and I'm FaceTiming her, and I'm calling her phone, and nothing is happening here except that my son is like, Dad, when are we getting out of here? And the stress is just rising in me, right? And now, of course, still it's okay. We're in a good place right here. And we get to finally my daughter, texts me back this yarn that she wanted me to buy, and it's like $1.50. So I just bought like 3 different kinds. It's like, okay, screw it. In case she wants something else, we're gonna get all these. And so we get up to the checkout lane, and apparently Michael's now is a UPS store too. Like you can go there and send packages, but like any other rollout of a corporate, retail kind of thing, the kids behind the counter were like completely clueless. And there's a woman there with like 4 boxes. And we're just standing there and the poor woman was like, I'm so sorry. I was like, it's not your fault. Like you are just, she was like, I was looking for the UPS store. I didn't know it was in Michael's. I was like, yeah, this is, obviously they're not ready for it, but it's not your fault. But all the while, and my son's, oh, come on, Dad, when's my surprise coming? And I can feel the tension start to rise, now again, I'm managing it, but I'm managing it by holding my awareness, right? By holding it in my awareness. And so I'm feeling the tension rise as it's happening. And I get up to the counter, and while we're standing there and this girl's struggling, there's only, of course, one girl in all these registers, only one person there. It's like a 17-year-old girl who's completely overwhelmed. And at one point, the manager even comes over, and we're online, like 2 people behind us. The manager comes over and asks her a question, looks over at us, talks for a second, then walks away. Like no effort at all to help this girl. And that, of course, like I used to own a business, and that's the kind of thing like that manager would have lost her job over that, because that is BS. You gotta be on it, but anyway. and my son was like, it's a pet peeve for you to do this. It's like, you know it, dude, you know it. And so finally we get to the counter and we're paying for the thing. And I'm like, you deserve more support than you're getting, I said to this young girl, and she was like, okay, thanks. And I was like, hey, good luck. I hope you don't get any more UPS packages today. And she's like, me too. So we walk out, drive back to my house, drop off the yarn, and now I'm like, okay, so now we got it's like a 20-minute drive to the place. It's gonna take maybe 20 minutes to get all the stuff and get everything set, and 20 minutes back. In an hour, I'm gonna be setting up this tank. Hour and 20 minutes, I'm recording my content. No big deal. We're going to get, and then I'll be fine for my 3:00 appointment. We're going to be good. Everything's going to be cool. And that little bit of stress that I felt was like, it's good. It's all good. I think this is going to be a long segment, by the way, because I'm not done with this story yet. Because then, after we drop off the yarn, we drive over to this thing. It should have been no more than a 20-minute ride, maybe even 15. Took us an hour. I mean, we hit every possible traffic jam that could possibly be there. We hit it. There was an accident. There was construction. There was a stalled car. There was everything you could think of. It took what I was anticipating being about, again, like an hour and 20 minutes, bookend to bookend, wound up being almost 4 hours. Okay. Now, of course, this is a very special moment for my son, so I had to keep myself. I didn't have the choice of saying, okay, never mind, we're not going to do this today, right? Like that would have been devastating for my son, and that would not have been fair. And so I was in it. I had to see it through. My friends, when I tell you, I haven't felt this kind of stress in years, okay? Years. I mean, literally, like the sensation, the tightness, the anxiety, the anger, right? Like when when you're really late and drivers, it's like get out of my way, kind of like all of those feelings were coming up, right? But I managed to get through the whole thing without one time becoming emotionally reactive, and that's the whole difference. Right? That's everything when it comes to stress. Okay, because I felt the stress. I mean, like I was shaking at moments with it, right? So it was impacting me. There's no question at all. It was impacting me. But because I have the skills of mindfulness and self-compassion, I was able to get through it without that emotional reactivity. And the emotional reactivity is what is the problem when it comes to stress, right? Because the internal feelings that you're having, that's just a physical sensation, right? It's painful. It's very uncomfortable. It can be very difficult to experience. But it doesn't ever have to translate into yelling at someone or making a decision that is going to be harmful to someone, including yourself. And so instead, I was able to actually monitor the whole thing, right? And even when we got home, I was able to allow my body. No substances were used at all, like nothing like that, right? No, I didn't go work out. I didn't do push-ups. I didn't do meditation. I didn't have time for any of that. So what I did was I just mindfully monitored the feelings that I was experiencing. Just like watching a pot of water come to a boil. Right? You can see the little bubbles start to come up, and then those little bubbles become bigger bubbles, and those bigger bubbles become really big. And then before you know it, the whole thing is churning and steaming and burbling and gurgling and doing all this agitated stuff. And then what happens when you turn the heat off, right? The water doesn't just go to still right away, right? The churning starts to calm a little bit, and then they're just big bubbles, and then it's smaller bubbles, and then there's no more steam, and the bubbles get smaller and quieter and smaller and quieter, and then the water is still, but it's still hot, right? If you stick your finger in there, even though it's not bubbling anymore, you're gonna feel that. It's still very hot. It takes time, right? And so when we mindfully acknowledge that it's going to take time to come down from this, and that the key is to just not throw another log on the fire, right? Because here's the thing. If I honk at another driver, I yell out the window at another driver's going to yell back at me, right? If I insult a cashier at a store, because I'm frustrated, say, can't you work faster? Or I go up to that manager and say, are you nuts? How come you can't monitor your employees? Well, then there's going to be a consequence to that. And for me, it's going to be shame, right? Very soon after that, I'm going to feel like, oh, what a jerk you were. How could you speak that way to somebody? That's going to increase that level of stress. And that's the thing, right? While I'm focusing on all that stuff that's happening here, what I'm not doing is I'm not monitoring the sensations of the stress that is happening in my body. And then throughout the entire thing, I must have said this to myself seriously in the 4 hours. I mean, at least 25 times, I told myself, this is really hard. You are in a very difficult position right now. Just kept repeating that to myself, just kept telling myself how difficult this is, how really, really hard your life is in this moment. It's hard, hard, hard. Acknowledging that allows me then to say, okay, yes, it is hard. And that's why it's really important not to react to the difficulty, not to say that thing to the person at Michael's, not to honk my horn and yell at people on the road, right? To continue. And this was another thing where we had to stop at Home Depot on the way to get like a spray thing to water down the lizard's tank and stuff like this, right? So it was like one on top of the other. And even in this stress, right? And this is key here. Okay, this is really, really key. That even in the stress, because I was monitoring it and because I kept repeating to myself, you're having a really, really difficult time. And of course, also, and now I've practiced this enough that it's kind of an automatic thing, but there's 3 steps to that process of self-compassion, right? It's the acknowledging how hard it is, but it's also connecting. Like when we go through a very difficult experience, and this is exactly how it goes, right? This is why we yell at people. This is why we honk our horn, because this is the worst thing happening to me. And you people out there don't understand because you're not me. And there's nobody who could be going through this the way I'm going through it. But that's just not correct. The only reason you feel that is because of the actual stress that your body is experiencing. So I know that because I've studied it and I've practiced it. And when you practice it often enough, it becomes that automatic emotional response. That's the key to all these practices. We do them, like Sharon Salzberg says, we don't practice meditation to get better at meditation. We practice meditation to get better at life. And of course, meditation includes whether it's formal or informal or, even monitoring my stress feeling in my body. That was a form of meditation. Okay. And it was the ability to stay with that allowed me then to, getting back to the point I was making, that even in this turmoil, even in this chaotic, just super uncomfortable thing, I made a point of continuing to be kind. So at Home Depot, even though we were late, I mean, at this point I was like, okay, screw it. I'd already canceled my 3:00 appointment. I'm so sorry for you. You know who you are. If you're out there, we're going to see you tomorrow and I'll make it up to you. Very sorry. But I was already like, okay, whatever, and that's the thing, right? You come to the point where it's like, okay, another 30 seconds is not going to make any difference here, right? So I can take 30 seconds and I can make eye contact with the woman at Home Depot who was, being kind to my son and was, really, just being very, very nice. And I can be kind right back to her. And for all you parents out there, okay, this is really important because 2 things that are really important. Number 1, and this is very important for everyone, not just parents, let the people around you know how you're feeling. It's important. It helps. So I was also reminding my son, I was like, look, dude, this is just, I'm feeling very stressed because of all this traffic and I'm sorry, but it doesn't mean I'm not having a good time. It doesn't mean that I'm not happy to be here. It doesn't mean I'm not really excited about what we're doing here. But I need you to know that I'm just really stressed, and there were a couple of times where I said, hey, Casey, could you just let's just have a couple moments of quiet in the car right now, like those kind of things. But again, delivered with kindness and compassion rather than shut up, I'm mad. Right? Go to your room. Clean your room. Shut up. Right? So as I tell him over and over and over again, well, guess what? Then he gets to see me being kind to the cashier at Michael's, being kind to the boys at the Scales and Tails on Wadsworth Boulevard in Lakewood, Colorado. If you're ever in the neighborhood, it's a great store. He gets to see me being nice to the lady at Home Depot. And this is important. Okay, because now I just taught him that just because you're having stress does not mean that you can't be kind. And here's the thing that he doesn't understand, that I understand, and I want you to understand, which is that as our friend Dan Siegel says, integration made visible is kindness and compassion. But as I asked Dan face to face through a computer screen, if integration produces kindness and compassion, then isn't it true also that kindness and compassion produces integration? And he said 100% yes. So disintegration is what's happening when you're in the stress response, right? When you're feeling that stress, that, whether it's just generalized stress or it's anxiety or it's depression or it's any number of those sort of, when you're feeling dysregulated on any level, that is a sign that your brain is no longer in integration. Bilaterally, vertically, and also vertically within you, from your brain to your body. You're not in integration. And when you're not in integration, that's the product of, that's where you get angry. That's where you lash out at people. That's where you feel that isolation in your suffering. That's just not true. None of that stuff is true. Anger doesn't help in this situation. Nasty words do not help in this situation. Aggressive driving does not help in this situation. In fact, all of those things feed the disintegration, causing more stress. So you're moving yourself further and further away. So therefore, when you're feeling those moments of stress, that's a signal from your body telling you to practice kindness and compassion, starting with yourself. Do you see that? So as I kept telling myself, Art, this is really hard. You're going through a very difficult situation right now. It's not your fault. You didn't know this traffic was going to be here. You're doing the best you can, and I'm here to stay. I'm staying with you. I'm not going to abandon you and go yell at a cashier here. We're going to stay in this together. We're going to support each other. Okay, that's the sort of dialogue going on in my mind. And because of that, and because of practicing the kindness and compassion for the kids at the reptile store and the lady at Home Depot and the kid at Michael's and even the manager at Michael's. I mean, I didn't call and Karen on the phone with corporate, right? I said, okay, well, she's probably overwhelmed too, right? And so practicing all of that kindness helped me to stay grounded even during this really difficult stress that I was feeling. And then that enables me to just be present with the stress. And yeah, it took 4 hours, all right? But eventually when we got home, I could feel my body start to soften, start to calm, and it took another, again, like the boiling water. I mean, it took like 2 hours on top of this before I felt like, it was like 7:00 at night by the time I finally felt like, okay, I'm good now. And just when my wife walks in from work, it's like, hey, how was your day? It was a day from hell. But I was okay, right? And that's the important thing too, right? Because when she walks in, 10 years ago, when she walked in, that I would have said, don't you talk to me. Don't you ask me how my day was. I'll tell you how my day was, as though it's her fault. I mean, she was just at work all day. I mean, she had nothing to do with any of this. And so by regulating myself through the mindfulness and self-compassion, I was able to be there. I was able to show up for my life in the form of my wife. I didn't do something that was hurtful towards her. I allowed myself to connect with her. And I mean, I was honest. I said, it's been a really, really hard day. And I got some work I got to catch up on. I mean, I was literally making a cup of caffeinated tea at 7:30. Like that's how it was. But it all got done. It's okay. I got some sleep. We're good. Everything's cool. The program's going to be amazing. Everything's okay. And so the point is that just because you're feeling that stress does not mean that everything's not okay, right? Because out there, everything is okay. It's just a question of how you're processing what's happening. And it's the mindfulness and the self-compassion that can get you to that place of sitting with the stress, just allowing it to be. Because in the unfolding moment by moment experience that our life is, it doesn't mean that any moment has to be a specific thing, right? So this moment just happened to be this feeling. The moment in which I'm recording this video, completely different. I don't feel any of those feelings that I felt yesterday. And that speaks to the self-awareness, of course, because when I recognize the feelings, that allows the mindfulness too. And the mindfulness creates the self-awareness. So it's all just one big, beautiful, virtuous cycle. Okay, folks. So that was two segments in one, I guess. I hope you can forgive me for that. But I wish you well, and I'll be back again tomorrow. I'm going to try to do a video tomorrow. It might be hard because I had to, reschedule a couple of appointments. So it's going to be a busy day for Art tomorrow, but we're going to try. All right, everybody. I wish you well. I'll be back again as soon as I can. Take care.